Howdy, my name is Nonat, and bam! Bonus video, you guys knew this was coming. I have to talk about the Secrets of Magic playtest Paizo has just released. Oh, I am so excited. This is gonna be I don't know how long it's gonna be, I'm just giving my first thoughts on everything, first impressions. I've done a scan through once. I didn't spend too much time here, but I like what I've seen, and we're just gonna go through it and talk about it. So this specifically contains the two new classes that'll be coming out in next year's Secrets of Magic book, the Magus and the Summoner. The Magus is sort of a spell sword that imbues magic into their weapons and fights like that, whereas the Summoner has a devoted Eidolon, which is a summoned creature that shares the summoner's life force. And I'll get more into that when we actually get to the classes. Let's just go ahead and jump right into the Magus, who has some really cool artwork. A little edgy for my taste, but I like the sword. I'm a sucker for swords with flat edges at the top. That's just really, really cool to me. So the Magus is a martial class at heart. It's sort of I would call it like 66% martial class, 33% spellcaster. I mean, even its key ability scores are strength and dexterity, not a spellcasting modifier. Surprisingly, only 8 hit points base for the class. I was expecting 10, but kind of cool. They are definitely trying their best to keep the Magus balanced, because there's a lot of stuff that could easily go haywire with the Magus, as you'll see. Trained perception, trained in reflex, expert in fortitude and will, trained in simple and martial weapons. The martial weapons kind of surprised me, actually. And trained in medium armor, which I did expect. But very, very low skills. If you're playing a Magus, you only get, Arcana and then 2 more skills before your intelligence modifier. So at most, you're starting with 7 skills if you have a +4, intelligence. Other than that, pretty simple stuff. Trained in arcane spell attacks. They are arcane spellcasters, same stuff as a wizard, but both the Magus and the Summoner use a new type of spell slot system. It's not explained in text on the Magus, it's explained in text later on the Summoner, but effectively you can see here, you don't get more spell slots as you level up past level 4. At levels 1, 2, 3, and 4, you get 1 additional spell slot every level. But when you level up from level 4 to 5, you don't gain more spell slots. Your spell slots just get higher. So you lose your level 1 spell slots. You can no longer prepare a level 1 spell, but you can now prepare level 3 spells when you couldn't before. Now, what's important to know about this, and what confuses a lot of people, is you can still prepare your first level spells in a second or third level spell slot. Now, will you want to do this? Probably not. Something like True Strike gets a little bit weaker as you level up. You'll probably want to slot in stronger spells. But if you have something like, Burning Hands, just as an example, you can just heighten it like normal. So instead of slotting it into first level, Magus can heighten spells at will just like a wizard, so that if you slot that first level Burning Hands into your new third level spell slot, well, you're dealing, the extra damage from casting it at third level. And this is how they level up. Every 2 levels, you swap out your lowest level spell slots for the next level higher. So we can see at level 7, they lose second level and gain 4th level. Level 9, they lose third level and gain 5th level. But what's important to note is they always have 4 spell slots maximum, which, 4 spells per day is not a lot. But I think, again, like I said, they're really trying to balance the Magus. They gave it low hit points, they gave it trained perception, they limited it to 4 spells per day. But you also still have cantrips. And cantrips, they function the same for any class, heightened up to half your level. Spellbook is the exact same as the wizards. Now, battle spells, there's not a whole lot to say about these. I'll be covering them later on about the Magus. They're the focus spells. Battle spells are focus spells. They work just the same as focus spells. Although, does it say what their spellcasting modifier is? Okay, there it is. Yeah, spell attack rolls and DCs are intelligence. So even though intelligence is not the key ability score, you'll probably still want some intelligence on your Magus. After the battle spells, which like I said, I'll cover the battle spells after they're at the bottom of the Magus list of features. We have their whole big gimmick of striking spell, which I always thought it was spell strike or something like that. I don't remember it being called striking spell, but You've learned the fundamental Magus technique that You've learned the fundamental Magus technique that lets you combine magic and martial attacks together. You gain the striking spell meta magic action. From start to finish, using the effects of striking spell is a 3-step process. First, you use the striking spell free action. Second, you cast a spell into your body or weapon. More on the body thing later, because that's really cool. Using the striking spell's meta-magical properties. And third, you strike with that weapon or your unarmed attack and discharge the spell at your target. Yeah, you can be a freaking monk magus and just bop people in the face with a freaking produce flame punch. Oh, it's so good. You can make Captain Falcon. I just realized this. Anyway, So, what confused me at first when I read this is striking spell is a free action, and it says it's a 3-step process, but the amount of actions this will actually take depends on the spell you select. If you're only using a 1-action spell, then it's a free action, then you spend the action to imbue your weapon with the 1-action spell, which I can't think of any 1-action spell attack spells. I think they're usually focus spells. And then you spend an action to strike. Now, if you hit with a melee strike using the receptacle for the spell, which is what you imbued in your weapon, the spell is discharged, affecting only the target you hit. The spell still requires its normal attack roll or saving throw. Oh, so it doesn't need a spell attack roll. Oh, I thought it needed a spell attack roll. Yo, that's really cool. So yeah, you can just imbue any spell into the weapon. Does that mean you can, like I said, these are first impressions, so I'm going to be learning as I read this a couple times. Can you imbue like a healing spell? Can you stab someone with a dagger with a level 4 heal spell? I don't know, there's no reason you would, but it would be hilarious. You could actually shoot healing arrows. I'll get to that later, about the arrows thing, because that is something you can do. Let me see. You drastically alter a spell to combine it with a martial attack. If the next action you use is to cast a spell that can target one creature. Yes! You can put heal in your dagger and heal people by stabbing them. Oh, I love it. What were we just talking about that I was making fun of with this? It was one of the archetypes. It was the blessed one. It was the blessed one archetype. Oh my word. It's like that, but better, because you can do it with weapons. So yeah, you land a hit with the weapon. Sorry, let me start from the beginning. You cast a spell into your weapon. The weapon then hits the target. Then, you have to roll another spell attack for the spell itself. That does not automatically hit just because your strike hit. However, it does use the same multiple attack penalty. So this is the first time we've ever seen a sort of ability, because a lot of martial classes can, like Flurry of Blows, attack twice. That doesn't use this, that's a bad example. Double Slice is a great example where you can attack twice for the same multiple attack penalty. We have never seen something like that for a spell. So this effectively lets you make a physical strike and a spell attack roll at the same multiple attack penalty, which is really, really cool. And if you critically hit with the strike, unfortunately, it doesn't automatically make your spell attack a crit, but it does make the spell attack roll 1 level higher of success. So if you critically hit with your physical strike and normal hit with your spell attack, well, that spell attack just became a critical hit. And if you critically hit with your weapon and they fail a saving throw against that spell, then they critically fail that saving throw. And what's cool is the spell is stored until the end of your next turn. So you don't even have to use a spell the turn you stored it. You can use it on the following turn. But keep in mind that if you don't use it that turn, it will be lost, spell slot and all. Also, you are the only one who can discharge your spell. You can't store a spell in a weapon, and then give it to a friend. Unfortunately, that does not work that way. Only you can use it that way. And now we get to the subclasses of Magus. They're synthesis or synthesi. I don't know the plural of synthesis. Synthesises? My synthesistas. Each Magus uses striking spell to blend magic with their preferred fighting style and weapon. This particular combination of styles is your Magus synthesis. The syntheses... Oh, it is syntheses. There it is. Thank you, Paizo. The syntheses presented in this book are as follows. The Shooting Star, which allows you to use striking spell with ranged weapons, like I was saying with the healing bow. This is basically just Eldritch Shot for the Eldritch Archer, put into a level 1 class feature. Paizo, you sure you're doing okay here? Yeah, you can place a spell in a ranged or thrown weapon when using striking spell and discharge the spell if you hit with a ranged strike. If the weapon uses ammunition, the magic is delivered through the ammunition. The spell has its effect on a hit only if the target is in range of the stored spell. That is a good counterbalance there. So if the spell you're casting only has a range of 30 feet and you shoot from 60 feet away, the spell's not going to do anything. You have to shoot from 30 feet away. I guess it's once the projectile fires, the spell is only effective for its normal range and then fizzles out as it flies past that range, which is a really good way to balance it. You don't want to be able to start dishing out chill touches and shocking touches from 130 feet away. Slide casting is cool, and it's given another class that could really make use of the duelist archetype that I talked about back in that video. Check it out up there if you want to watch it. It is another fighting style that specifically uses a one-handed weapon and a free hand. You can't have a shield, you can't have a dual wield, you have to have a free hand. After you use striking spell and start casting a spell that takes 1 action or more to cast, you can stride as part of that cast a spell activity. You can also take the step action instead if you want to be careful. If the movement is disrupted, it doesn't disrupt the spell, and vice versa. And again, you can only do this if you're storing your spell in a one-handed weapon and your other hand is free. What this means for 3 actions is you can cast a spell, stride. So what this means is for 3 actions, you can stride, cast a 2-action spell, make a physical attack, all in 3 actions. That is absolutely insane. So for reference, at level 1, for 3 actions, you can cast Shocking Grasp into your little longsword, your 1d8 longsword. Let's say you have a +3 to strength, +3 to intelligence. So you then get to stride up to your speed, make that physical attack roll, and a spell attack roll. And if those both hit, you're doing 1d8 plus strength plus 2d12 at level 1. That's disgusting, man. Like I said, if you have a +3 to strength, that's 1d8 plus 3. That's a potential 11 damage. 2d12 is 24. That's a potential 35 damage for a level 1 spell slot. That's absolutely nuts, dude. Slide casting is absolutely crazy, and I can see some really cheeky stuff coming out of that, especially as you just get higher and higher level spell casting. The action economy on that is so unfair. I love it. But that's one that I could totally see Paizo nerfing. I think even if that still just had you can step as part of the cast a spell activity, I think it would still be good. Even if you removed the stride aspect entirely, if you could step 5 feet while casting your spell, I think it'd still be good. Sustaining Steel is probably the most boring of the 3 synthesis. It's for 2-handed weapons, and effectively if you use Striking Spell on your 2-handed weapon and clonk somebody on the head, you either gain temporary hit points equal to twice the spell's level, or equal to the spell's level if it's a cantrip or focus spell. So if you're level 3 and you cast a first level Shocking Grasp, you get 2 temporary hit points. And if you're level 3 and you cast a second level cantrip, let's say Electric Arc, you get 2 temporary hit points. Like, I guess it just keeps you a little bulkier because you'll probably be getting those hit points every single round. So it's almost just like a constant mini buffer, which is cool. I don't know. That one really kind of bores me, which I don't know how many Magus plans to play with 2-handed weapons, but, you know, if you're there, you get a little bit more survivability, which is cool. Moving on to class features, Magus feats starting at 2nd level and higher. They are still a spellcaster, so they don't get a feat at level 1. That's a big difference, because they feel sort of like a martial class, but they don't get a level 1 feat. Skill feats, general feats, skill increases, ability boosts, ancestry feats, lightning reflexes, weapon expertise, weapon specialization, alertness, resolve. Okay, looks like they pretty much get all the standard stuff. Again, a nice mix of martial and spellcaster. They still get, this is actually one thing I wanted to point out. They become a master of medium armor and below, a master of martial and simple weapons, and a master of spellcasting. That's insane. Master proficiency in basically every combat-related stat? That's nuts. I mean, again, it's only up to medium armor, so their max armor is still limited. But they are the only class to get master in armor, weapons, and spellcasting. And their 19th level feature, their only unique feature here, is double spell strike, which effectively, as long as I read it correctly, is when you use spell strike and you hit somebody, the spell lasts for another swing. It still wears off at the end of the following turn, but effectively you've doubled your spell slots. With that shocking grasp I mentioned, you hit them, it deals the 2d12 damage. I mean, it's a first level spell, bad example, but just for the sake of the example, you would attack, you would deal the 2d12 damage, and then until the end of your next turn, you could activate it again without spending another spell slot. However, there are downsides to this in that it's not quite as good as the first time you cast it. Everything is treated as one worse. So on the spell attack roll, if you hit, you actually miss. If you crit, you actually hit. Same goes with saving throws. If they fail, they succeed. If they succeed, they critical succeed. So honestly, as far as a 19th level feature, I feel like that's kind of weak. Maybe they're just trying to balance out just the core power of the Magus with fairly weaker class features. Cause that's rough. That effectively means if you want to hit them with the second wind of it, you have to critically hit them. Now granted, if your physical strike critically hits, then effectively it balances it out and it gets rid of the negative, but I don't know. I feel like it wouldn't be overpowered at 19th level to basically give them 8 spells per day instead of 4. I don't think that'd be nuts. Again, it's the playtest. Things might be wildly out of balance. I don't know what their original and final plan is going to be, but I feel like the slide casting is a little overtuned and the double spell strike is a little undertuned. I feel like, especially for the 19th level, the penultimate class feature, this is kinda lame. I think if they just remove the 1 degree worse, I think it'd be fine. Maybe if you do want to make it still slightly worse, maybe make it so a crit with a physical attack doesn't improve it. That way it's still a little bit weaker, but you don't have to critically hit with a spell attack to normal hit them. You know what I mean? And moving on to what everybody wants to see, the Magus feats. Now, a lot of the ones that will probably disappoint some people, a lot of these are just copy-pasted from the Wizard and Sorcerer spell lists, and probably the Witch. I haven't looked at the Witch too much. But let's go ahead and take a look anyway. Arcane Fists. So much this, I need to play a Fist Magus so bad. It's basically, this is just the powerful Fist feature. This is just like taking the Monk archetype at first level. And it's really cool, you know, it increases your fists to 1d6, gets rid of the -2, and you get the crit specialization for unarmed strikes in the Brawling group. Really cool. If you want to play a Fist Magus who delivers their spells through their fists, there you go. Combat assessment is actually the same as Fighter, where when you use combat assessment as an attack, you make the strike. If you hit, you can recall knowledge. If you critically hit, you get +2 on that recall knowledge. Simple as that. But you can also only do it on a target once per day, which, sorry, Louise. This is the same as the Fighter one. I still don't like it. Eschew materials, same as the Wizard, where you just spell out spells rather than spending components. Familiar, we all know how that works. Raise a Tome is just hilarious, because it's just Raise Shield, but it's Raise Tome. As long as you have to be holding a book. Doesn't matter what book it is, just has to be a book. You raise up the book you're holding and flip it open to defend yourself and expedite your studies. The book remains raised until the start of your next turn. While you have a book raised, you have +1 bonus to armor class and +1 to recall knowledge on the subject matter of the book, which will usually be arcane if you have an actual physical spell book. And if you're a master in, like, arcane, you get +2 to the bonus instead. This is just so funny to me. I don't know if I would ever take this. It's just silly. I mean, this is already instantly useless on, slide casting, because you can't have anything in your other hand. It's also useless for sustaining steel, so that would only be good for shooting star, which is also not that useful. Wait, Paizo, when would a Magus ever want something in their other hand? hold on. When would a Magus ever want something in their other hand? They're either using 2 hands on a big weapon, 2 hands on a ranged weapon, or an open hand for slide casting. I guess if you're a Magus who specifically uses a hand crossbow and a book, I guess you're good. Maybe it's a backup if you want to be defensive and you don't plan to slide cast. You just pull out your book as a shield. But why not just equip a shield at that point? This is a little silly. I don't see anyone really making much use of it, aside from roleplay, of course. Moving on to second level. Cantrip expansion, same ol'. Enhanced familiar, same ol'. Spirit sheath, anime character. You've magically constructed an extra-dimensional sheath for your weapon, typically accessed through a pocket, sleeve, or clothing seam. It's a +2 bonus to stealth checks to conceal it, but it can only hold a weapon of 1 bulk or less, so no great clubs in your back pocket. Yeah, it's really just, think a bag of holding for your weapon. You can just have like a little shirt pocket, and you can just be like, whoop, rapier. And it's really cool. And you can actually give it to other people. If it is just like a little pouch on your belt, you can like give that pouch to your friend and they can draw the weapon out of it. This isn't limited just to you. It's pretty cool. And on top of that, it's also the quick draw feat. It only works when you're using striking spell, but if you're using striking spell, you can draw your weapon from the spirit sheath and imbue it with the spell, all for the same actions as casting the spell. So it's a really niche quick draw, but you'll still make use of it constantly. I think this is the best second level feat, no doubt. But Spell Strikes is just Bespell Weapon, but it also works on unarmed attacks. You know, you cast a spell, and then you can either imbue it into your weapon or your fists, and not even just fists, it's all unarmed attacks. So yeah, if you have stances somehow, like from a monk archetype, you will still be able to apply the bonus damage to your stance unarmed strikes, which is really, really cool. Spell Parry is part of that duelist style Magus with the open hand, and for one action, you give yourself a +1 bonus to AC and a +1 bonus to all saving throws against spells until the start of your next turn. So it's, again, similar to like Raise a Shield or the other parry feats. I think it's just called Dueling Parry from Fighter. But this one gains a little bit less armor class, but it gives you +1 to all saving throws against spells. So in the right situations, that's really good. And steady spellcasting, you know, something would interrupt you. You can try not to be interrupted. Striker's Scroll, I don't really understand. I guess you could combine it. I'll read through it first. You can attach a scroll to your weapon to blend its spell into an attack, carefully folding it around a part of the weapon or pasting it to the weapon's surface. Attaching a scroll requires the Affix a Talisman. You can have only one scroll affixed. You can cast the spell from the scroll after using Striking Spell to store the scroll spell in the attached weapon. So, I guess this gives you an additional spell in combat. If you happen to have the scrolls, you can cast that rather than using a spell slot. So I guess if you take the Scroll Trickster archetype, which we haven't covered yet in the series, you can basically get more spell slots per day, which is kind of cool. Although, again, it's a 10-minute thing to apply it, so it's 1 extra spell slot per encounter. It's fine. It's specifically for if you either A, have access to a bunch of scrolls, or you have the Scroll Trickster's archetype. Otherwise, it's cool. It's cute. I like the idea of slapping on the edge of a hammer and just exploding the hammer with a fireball. That's kind of a cool idea. Energize Strikes. Kind of okay. If you ever cast a spell that deals acid, cold, electric, fire, or sonic damage, you energize a weapon you're wielding, and for 1 minute, you deal 1 additional damage per damage die. So if you have a striking weapon, you'll be doing 2 extra damage of that damage type for 1 minute, which is, again, really good. And we compare this to the Duelist's Challenge, which can only do this to one specific person, and if they attack anybody else, they take a penalty to damage. But this, raw bonus to damage. This is what Duelist's Challenge basically should have been somehow. Oh, you can also do it to your unarmed strikes, which is awesome. Martial Caster is cool. It basically gives you a 3rd level of spell slots. So at 6th level, when you can cast 3rd level Magus spells, you have 2 3rd level and 2 2nd level spells per day. On top of those, this grants you 2 1st level spells per day. They can only be used for the spells seen, there. We can see it's, Fleet Step, Jump, Mage Armor, Magic Weapon, and True Strike. But there's still extra spells, they're good to have. Though I noticed specifically none of these do damage and cannot be imbued in your weapon. So, Fleet Step is great, Jump is good, and Mage Armor, this might be worth it for Mage Armor alone. Granted, they would have to not be wearing armor, so, I don't know. It's, in level 6, Magic Weapon isn't great, but True Strike is always good. I think you would just take this for 2 additional True Strikes per day. Yeah, it's good. And then at 9th level, you get haste. So honestly, this is worth taking maybe even later, or just taking it to invest to get haste automatically at 9th level. Real good. Spell Countermeasures gives you a battle spell. We'll go over those. Capture Spell is so needlessly cool. It is the most anime thing I've seen in a long time, Paizo. If you succeeded a saving throw against a foe's harmful spell, or they fail a spell attack roll against you, and on your last turn you put up your spell parry, you can capture their spell in your weapon and use it on the following turn as if you had imbued it with that spell using Striking Spell. If someone shoots a Magic Missile is a bad example. Let me find a good example. If you've put up spell parry and someone shoots a lightning bolt at you and you succeed your reflex save, you still take half the damage unless you critically succeeded, because it does not change that. You would still take 1/2 of the 4d12, but you then absorb it into your weapon, and on your next turn, you can attack them and deal an additional 4d12 electricity damage, provided they don't succeed their saving throw against it as well. It's a free spell slot. If you're fighting a spellcaster and you can absorb their spell, you just gained an extra spell that turn. Holy crap, it's so cool. And it's worth noting, I keep mentioning these for damaging spells. You can do these for conditions too. You could do this for something like, I don't know, Paralyze. You could absolutely attack imbue Paralyze, slash at somebody, and then they have to make a will save. And if you critically hit with your slash, then they have to critically succeed their will save, otherwise they are going to fail. It's really cool. The stuff you can do with the Magus is absolutely nutty. Standby spell is super simple. You pick a spell you can cast, and you no longer have to prepare it. Normally, like a wizard, you have to prepare your spells ahead of time. This one, even if you don't prepare it, you can spend a spell slot and cast the spell anyway. It's okay. Runic Impression's a battle spell. We'll get to that later. Spell Swipe is what literally every Magus is going to take at 8th level. Why would you take anything else when for 2 actions, you can strike 2 targets, and if you have Striking Spell in that weapon, that spell attacks both targets. Even if it's a single target spell, like Shocking Grasp, it hits both targets. You make the attack roll against both of them. It's really, really dumb. Granted, it's 2 actions, so this would only work if you imbued it on the turn prior and then used Spell Swipe. So that's where it is sort of a lot weaker. You only get 3 actions on each turn, and most 1-action spells aren't super worth imbuing. So managing your spells, if you're at the beginning of combat and you imbue it on your first turn and wait for the enemy to approach you, you can get a really, really good attack off with this. Cascading Ray doesn't even make sense, and it's so cool. Basically, you hit an enemy with a spell that did any of these damages, most damage types, and then you use your reaction. So granted, when you do this, you don't get a reaction that round for the rest of the round, but you just fire off an energy ray within 60 feet to any other creature and make a spell attack roll for the same damage of the spell. Granted, this one is at multiple attack penalties, so if you used Cascading, or if you use Striking Spell, this will be at -10 unless you're agile. So its chances of it working are slim, but it's still just a free attack on a reaction. It's pretty dang good. Worth noting that if you do crit with your physical weapon strike, Cascading Ray's spell attack roll is not improved by that crit. Comet Spell is so interesting with the Shooting Star synthesis. So if you have a bow and you Striking Spell hits somebody with the bow and deal damage, you can now create a trail from them back to you, and any creature in the line takes damage equal to the spell's level. It's really cool. So if there's someone 200 feet away, granted, I don't know how well you're going to shoot them if there's a line of foes between them and you, but, it's still cool if you can somehow manage this strike and then just pull this line as a free action to deal 5 damage to all the enemies in the line. I don't think it's quite as good as I'm making it sound. I think it's just more neat. And it's a free action, so, that's just free damage. But it's really cool. Healer's Steel is a straight upgrade for sustaining steel synthesis. In addition to the temporary hit points you're gaining, so you're level 10, so you're gaining about 5 temporary hit points. 10. 5 from cantrips, 8 or 10 from spells. In addition to that, you also regain hit points equal to twice the spell's level. Now, this only works with spell slots. You can't heal off cantrips, but, at this point, all your spells are levels 4 and 5. You're healing for 8 or 10 hit points every time you use one of those spells, or removing persistent negative damage, which is a little niche, but still, if you used a necromancy spell, you can heal yourself and get rid of the negative damage. This base, at level 10, if you take this, you effectively just gave yourself 36 points of healing to use over the course of the day if you heal off of all of your spell slots. That's pretty good. You can really make an effective tank Magus with two-handed weapons. Portal Slide is so unnecessary. It's so unnecessary, Paizo. The slide casting, instead of sliding, you can now teleport up to half your speed. A little gap? No worries, I'm just gonna just warp over the gap to get to the opponent through the difficult terrain, through my opponents, doesn't matter. And if you're casting a conjuration or transmutation spell, you can teleport up to your speed. This dumb, Paizo. The amount of repositioning for a free action. This dumb. Quicken Spell Strike is really, really good, albeit once per day, so it's a little restrictive. But once per day, you can reduce the actions it takes to cast a spell when using Striking Spell. So this means you can either make a 2-action spell, only cost 1 action, or you can make a 3-action spell, 2 actions. So you can now cast a 3-action spell and strike on the same turn. Level 10. Magus. Oh, Bespelled Persistence is so powerful. In addition to just dealing 1d6 bonus damage, your Bespell strikes now inflict 1d6 persistent damage of whatever damage it would have been. Yeah, that's fine. All as a free action, after you cast a spell, all of your freaking attacks now deal 1d6 plus 1d6 persistent. That's so good. Magic Sense is kind of boring. Whenever you're seeking, you always have Detect Magic. Overwhelming Spell Strike is good. I don't know if it's as good as Bespelled Persistence, but strike a foe. If your strike discharges a stored spell that deals damage, the spell ignores an amount of the target's resistance equal to your level. I mean that is a lot of resistance negation, I'll be honest. That's level 12. So actually, that's pretty good. I definitely undersold that one. Being able to reduce something's fire resistance by 12 and just inflict the damage, that's really good. It also applies to persistent damage inflicted by the spell, so alright. That's pretty good. School Shroud is a free action once per turn after casting a spell that is not a cantrip, so this means your focus spells work as well. Depending on the school of the spell, you get an after effect that lasts until the end of your next turn, whether it be Stone Skin, Blink, See Invisibility, Heroism, Fire Shield, False Life, Fleet Step, or Invisibility. Decent stuff, it's just whenever you cast a spell, you're now giving all of your spells an additional effect. So all of your illusion spells now also grant you invisibility. That ain't bad. Hasted Assault. You speed yourself up and you get the Hasted Assault battle spell, which again, I'll be going over. Preternatural parry is the classic, just as a reaction, you raise your defensive. It's like reactive shield, but it's for parries. You snap your blade into place to ward off harm, you gain a +2 circumstance bonus to armor class, and saving throws against the triggering effect until the start of your turn, and the triggering effect is a strike or a spell attack roll, or a saving throw against a spell effect. So this is honestly better than reactive shield in every way, albeit only if you have the duelist stance of nothing in your other hand. That's actually amazing. A strike, spell attack roll, or saving throw as a reaction to give yourself +2. That's actually really good. Dispelling Spell Strike is okay. It's a 2-action strike, so this is hard to do on one turn unless you have Quicken Spell Strike or a Hasted Assault. But effectively, when you hit a creature with Striking Spell, you can you can make a counteract check, not automatically. You can attempt to counteract any effect on them. If an enemy is hasted, you can hit them with Dispelling Spell Strike and attempt to remove the haste from them. I suppose you could just imbue your spell with a 1-action cantrip and then do that, and that's actually a really good way of doing it. But it's effectively a counter spell you can do by hitting them on the head, and I kind of like that. Effortless Concentration, busted whenever any spellcaster gets this. You just, as a free action, you sustain your spells rather than spending an action every turn. Really good. I don't know how often Maguses plan to be sustaining spells, but still good. Secondhand Strike. When your target proves resilient to your magic, you can recall the magic back into your weapon to strike again. This is a, no, do-over, I didn't know! If you did, Fireball in your weapon and you hit something and the GM says, they took no damage, then you can say, no I didn't, and suck the Fireball back into your weapon. It doesn't refresh the duration or anything. You still have to be used by the end of your next turn. But, it's kind of funny. I just like this thought of hitting something, the fireball goes off and just starts encompassing the target, and then the Magus realizes it's doing nothing and just goes, and the fireball just plays in reverse back up into the club. Oh, I love it. Versatile Spell Strike is interesting, and I don't know how I feel about it at level 18. Effectively, you designate one of your 4 spell slots to hold infinite potential and can be used to cast any spell, so long as it's 2 levels lower than the slot you prepared it in. So you're level 18, so you can cast up to 9th level spells, so if you sacrifice an 8th level spell slot, you can cast any 6th level spell. I don't know, it adds a lot of flexibility, but wasn't there a feat earlier that was just that, but better, and way earlier? Yeah, Standby Spell. I guess this gives way more flexibility because it can be any spell, but I feel like a Magus is not a versatile caster to begin with. A Magus isn't known for having 1,000 different spells at their disposal. They still get 2 spells per day, but I feel like a Magus is gonna have their arsenal, they're gonna have their fire damage, their ice damage, maybe some force damage. I don't know how much versatility a Magus is going to have versus, a wizard. I feel like this is way too high level, and I don't think it needed the 2-level restriction. Maybe a 1-level restriction. That way you can't cast any 9th level spell, but I don't know. Feels a little bit lackluster. Supreme Spell Strike is the classic martial, you're always quickened now. And that extra action is actually really limited compared to something like the fighters. It can only be used to make an attack with a weapon that is imbued with striking spell. Why can't it just be the same as the fighter, which just lets you strike? Why does the weapon being imbued with the spell allow you to attack with it faster? I think this could have just been the same as the fighter. I guess it would feel kind of cop-outy and samey if they got the same, but a Magus is a fighter wizard. I don't think that would have been bad if it's just you're permanently quickened and your extra action can only be used to strike. I think that would have been fine. Whirlwind Spell is just like Sweep Spell that we saw earlier where you hit 2 enemies, but this hits everything around you. Now note, it says all creatures within your reach, so if you have something like a spear, your reach is 10 feet, so this Whirlwind Spell can now be used to cast a spell on everything around you. Granted, it's 3 actions, so it would be really tough to do, but it's possible. and I'm waiting for the day that someone just casts Disintegrate into their spear, is in the middle of like 8 enemies, and just Whirlwind Disintegrate. That'd be amazing. Moving on to the battle spells, which are the last part of the Magus. Hasted Assault is... So, Hasted Assault is just the level 20 Supreme Spell Strike feat, but better, and at... What level do you get this? Was it 14? I think it was 14. Was it 14? Yeah, it's 14, so I guess it's not too much earlier. But still, you become quickened, but this one lets you do it for all strikes, not just the spell strikes. I think they should, I don't know, like this, for 1 minute to just a free strike action every turn, it's really good, don't get me wrong. That effectively allows you to cast 3 action spells into your spell strike, which is dumb. But that's what this should be. This. Copy-paste this. Magus Potency, which is what you start with at first level. You target any weapon you're wielding or yourself, and it becomes +1 potency. Unfortunately, this is just really crappy magic weapon, which is fine because they have limited spell slots, so that's what they're going for. But the fact that you don't even get the effective magic weapon until 3rd level, come on. I think it could have been +1 striking on a focus spell, and it would have been balanced. And then, yeah, +1 striking at... Sorry, no, not even at 3rd... Wait, that's at 5th level! Wait! Most players will probably have a... Oh my golly. Again, they're balancing the Magus, their base core stuff is super powerful. This is useless. This is so useless. I mean, it's not useless, but it's pretty poor. Like, I guess at level 1 you give yourself a +1 to attack rolls. Neat. But the second you get a magic weapon, this is a useless moot focus spell. That's a big letdown. Like, yeah, I guess a +3 greater striking is fine, but you're already well, at level 13, that's probably pretty good. But still. Runic Impression is actually pretty cool. For 1 action, you imbue a weapon you're wielding, or yourself, with a weapon rune. And then it either gets Corrosive, Flaming, Frost, Ghost Touch, Returning, Shifting, Shock, or Thundering. And yeah, and then once you're level 13, you can also apply Greater Corrosive, Greater Flaming, Greater Frost, Greater Shock, and Greater Thundering. Really cool stuff. I think those just add extra damage. Let me check. Yeah, so normal flaming is 1d6 extra damage, and greater flaming is 2d10. So that's a really good one. Being able to just enchant your weapons for bonus damage. Good lord, you could roll a lot of dice with this class. Imbue yourself with like a flaming rune, and Bespell weapon, and the Bespell one that makes them bleed, and the spell damage, and your weapon damage. This is rivaling rogue sneak attacks for like number of dice. And the final one we're talking about, spell level 3, level 5, spell countermeasures. As a reaction, you quickly create a magical protection for yourself tailored to a spell about to harm you. Gain +2 bonus to armor class and saving throws against the spell, and 5 against the spell's damage. That's not bad. I mean, you get that at level 5 or 6, and then you compare that to Preternatural Parry. It's effectively the same thing, except this one costs a focus point, but it reduces the damage you take by 5. I think this is better. Again, it still costs a focus point, but this is just better than Preternatural Parry. Nice. Alright, so I originally thought I was going to cover the entire playtest in this video. They're going to be 2 separate videos, because these classes are long, and I've already been recording for 50 minutes, so I'm going to cut this down. I'm going to get this out tomorrow on Wednesday, and then you'll hopefully get a Summoner one on Thursday. Cool? Cool. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you liked this just kind of chill style of review, I guess I'd call it. First impression stuff. I might do it some more in the future with other content that comes out. Maybe for Pathfinder, maybe it's for something else. Who knows? I'll also know, A, from the comments, B, from the view count. View count is always the best way for me to judge and gauge what you guys like about things. But yeah. I'd love it if you subscribed, if you liked, if you rang the bell. And if you're interested, there are links in the Discord to my Patreon, Discord, Twitter, and Coffee, and you can click that join button to support the channel monetarily if you so choose. Comes with some cool perks. Alright, I have to go prepare for my game tonight because we're playing in about 2 hours, and I haven't started setting anything up. I'm gonna go burst through that. You're gonna have a wonderful rest of your day. And until next time, no nat ones.